I notice when I always ask for the first question, it takes a little time to gestate. So the second question, all the hands go up. So if they don't, I have more questions. Anyone? No? Go ahead, sir.
I was just wondering about enterprises typically buy through value-added resellers, and how does the business model work for an application that's sold at 99 cents? I mean, how do they monetize the relationship at the reseller level?
So the question was, typically software is sold through VARs. How do they monetize through an app store? In a model that's vastly different.
I think they're having a very difficult time right now. In fact, we've met with several app developers. They're trying to solve for this problem. We know from our enterprise customers they're trying to solve for this problem too, because the last thing procurement wants is 10,000 expense reports for 99 cents a piece. And they're getting that right now, to be honest with you. So that's where our differentiation comes in as an app management platform versus what you'll hear around device management, is that we help manage the relationship between the IT department and the company, the employees, and the third element here, which are app developers. Because they're as eager to get into the enterprise as the enterprise is eager to bring in the best applications. So you need to have some kind of model to do that, which we hope we have the right one for. The last piece, though, is that bulk licensing, because companies are used to being able to license large amounts of software at a reduced price. If you look at some of the standard app stores out there, they don't give you the opportunity to purchase outside a single credit card to a single user, which companies are bulking at. In fact, we know some stories that OEMs have told enterprises to give them gift cards to their employees to use rather than have them expense things out.
Yeah, it's a real problem, because I think that if you look at what's happened in the app space, for better or for worse, what Google and Apple have done, and we've obviously kind of contributed to that, is that in essence, by making software so cheap and so accessible, you really, to some extent, have devalued the value of software on mobile as well. And it's going to be a real challenge to get over that. Especially in markets outside the United States, where the perceived value of software for apps on mobile is even less, especially from a consumer point of view. It's very tough. I mean, GetJar's model, because of that, from the get-go, has been that all downloads on GetJar are free. Even if somehow somebody else is monetizing on the back end, we envision a day where even premium games or premium software, something like Need for Speed from Electronic Arts, might be a free download simply because it's being brought to you by Groupon and it's sponsored, right? So that you download Need for Speed, and at the same time you download the Groupon app because they brought it to you, and they're paying EA, right? So I think the dynamics of the business models are very much in flux, and are certainly going to have to be very different from what ordinarily we've seen on the enterprise side, for sure.
Other questions? Let me ask you a follow-up. Advertising-based apps within the enterprise, I would think, could we potentially see some pushback from the IT side and even the business side, where I guess just see potential flare-ups there, advertising a competitor's product, whatever. Is that going to be problematic in the enterprise, advertise-supported apps?
I think it's too early to say. There's a lot of, I think if it's for the enterprise specifically, like if you look at Quick Office,
right.
Their model is to go after enterprises, so I think they're going to try to stay away as much as they can, companies that are actively seeking that market. But I think for kind of pseudo, like Evernote has advertising in the lower left-hand corner. So that's a gray area. I don't know where that can go, but most of the things that they're advertising are other productivity tools. So I always, good advertising really helps you find some things that you didn't know you needed, right? Bad advertising does kind of the things that you were talking about, where you could be promoting a competitor's product. So I think that you're going to have one bad moment for there to be a policy there. But I think until you have that, it's going to be, everyone's going to be careful around it.
Right.
Keep in mind that advertising is changing and evolving as well, right? So I think that compared to where we were 2 or 3 years ago, it's gotten a long way. And now you're talking about, much more contextual, much more relevant ads, geolocated ads. So I think that, the ability for ad networks to offer targeted advertising, which is much more relevant to the consumer, in this case, the enterprise user, is going to get better and better, and therefore the ads will get better and better. I mean, there will be cases where you might not want to have any kind of advertising or any kind of distraction within an enterprise app, but I certainly think that the technology is there to make the ads relevant.
Okay. Where do you guys see opportunities in this space? I would imagine that there are a lot of holes in the market because it's relatively new.
Yep.
Where do you see opportunities?
You want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I think Android's going to be, it's an easy answer, right? I guess you can't lose by saying that. But Android is really not designed right now to be used in the enterprise because it was initially created with open source philosophy, and a lot of the security issues that IT departments just use as a blocker for devices, they have no answer for yet, right? So, everything from VPN support to, a whole host of things, right? And IT departments, a lot of them are still conditioned to say no until they feel somewhat comfortable. So I think with Android, if there's a company that can come along and be able to address those issues without coming in with a hammer, that's the concern, right? Is someone comes along with a solution that locks down Android just as much as a BlackBerry got locked down, and then suddenly you have a bunch of really big BlackBerries running around that nobody wants to use because they can't even download a single application. So someone who can come out with a very intelligent, enterprise level solution for that would be great. And that would help us because we're all about enabling applications. If the device management solution comes out that's too heavy, you can't get apps on the devices. So I think there's an op there.
I think that one of the opportunities I see is really small and medium-sized businesses. I think if you look at the potential behind tablets, as a way to showcase products to people very rapidly, whether you're in a retail environment or a soft drink environment or a finance environment, the ability to carry around this data and show it very quickly, and on top of that, use a device which, from a company point of view, is significantly cheaper than a laptop, even at bulk discount. I think that makes it very attractive. I was talking with a colleague of mine who has started a new startup in New York and is doing has an application for iPhone, which allows basically a retailer, to basically take a picture of a customer and kind of dress that customer with any of the apparel that they happen to have in the store. Now that's a great concept, but again, it's on a very limited screen size, right? And so I think if you look at the potential to have something like that on a tablet and you multiply that times thousands of different retailers who don't necessarily need laptops to do these kind of activities or don't want to carry them around because they're bulky, I think there's going to be huge opportunities in the SMB segment.
Yeah. And I'd like to add one thing too, is if you're in the SI business or a consultant, this is going to be like 1999 again, because no one has the right answers. No. And so people are going to pay you a whole lot of money to come in and sound smart. Yeah. So if you sound smart, come talk to us because we'd love for you to take a look at our product. But I think that's where we are right now. We're so new. There's so many devices out there, so many different approaches. You've got WebOS that's pushing HTML5. You've got Windows Phone 7 that's, we don't know what they're pushing. But you've got other vendors out there that are doing a lot of interesting things, and there's a huge opportunity for someone who can map the challenges of a company to the solutions out there, because there's no right answer right now. So,
I think going back quickly to that point on HTML5, because it tends to come up at every single conference that I go to, and I recently spoke at South by Southwest about this. I think, companies also really need to understand exactly, who they're making these applications for and what the objective of the application is. And it sounds very intuitive, but I think, definitely what we see is, we see a lot of companies going out and building consumer-facing apps where they really don't need native applications. The fact of the matter is that, Yahoo and Facebook and many other services out there, weather.com, they don't really need to have an app, right? It's the question of reach versus engagement. That always ends up being the trade-off. And I think that enterprises need to take a really good look at this because, again, as you were mentioning earlier, when you're updating a mobile site or something, it's updated, it's on the fly. You don't have to push anything out again, right? If you have hundreds of thousands of employees on completely different devices, and you insist on having a native application strategy, then of course every time that you have an update, you have to push it across many, many different app stores potentially, and many different handsets, and you have many different bugs to deal with. So I think, for me, mobile web is, I think there's going to be a kind of a 360-degree loop. I think that we're going to come back to mobile web maybe in 24 months from now, when many of us are completely kind of disgusted and kind of fed up with a lot of the fragmentation. And you'll see that, yes, iPhone and Android will continue to grow and penetrate the market, and provide a lot of that engagement that in some cases the enterprise app does need. But if you don't need to access, the phone book, if you don't need to access location-based services, if you don't need to use the accelerometer on the tablet, do you really need a native application? And that's kind of always the question I ask companies and agencies that are kind of going through this thought process.
Great. Well, that's all the time I have. I want to thank Ken and Patrick. Thank you, guys.